Solar flares dimmed slowly, a subtle warning in the void of space. Humanity's fleets, sprawling and proud, hovered helplessly in orbit. Sol, the sun, our source of life and energy, was encased in an invisible prison, a strange alien energy field whose nature defied every human theory, and all of this was deliberate. The message was clear. Earth would be left powerless, vulnerable and afraid. Dr. Marcus Laine, once a solar physicist, now a strategist for weapons innovation, stood at the heart of the orbital laboratory. His eyes, trained for decades to read the sun's magnetic fluctuations, now stared in disbelief. The console in front of him glowed softly, displaying anomalies he could barely comprehend. He held a small device, perhaps humanity's last hope, yet it felt fragile against the scale of the problem. "This isn't just an energy shortage," Marcus muttered to himself, the fatigue in his voice barely masking his fear. "It's a statement. They want us to feel powerless." The room around him hummed with electricity. Every display, every blinking light seemed to echo the tension in the air. Outside, in the vacuum of orbit, human ships were losing power, drifting like paper in a cosmic storm. Engineers scrambled to reroute systems. Thrusters fired in tiny bursts trying to maintain position, but the invisible blockade held steady, unyielding. Marcus's gaze drifted back to the sun. It pulsed with a silent might, billions of tons of plasma roiling in its core. If humans could only harness even a fraction of that energy, a solution might emerge. But the risk was unimaginable. Converting a star's magnetic fields into a weapon could either shatter the blockade or annihilate everything nearby, including Earth. He took a slow breath. "I have to try," he whispered. "There's no other way." The lab's communication console blinked. A voice from the fleet broke the silence. "Dr. Laine, we're losing fusion output on 3 major vessels. At this rate, our orbital defense will fail in hours." Marcus clenched his jaw. He thought of the millions depending on him, of families in orbit stations, of cities on Earth powerless and in fear. He remembered the quiet prayer he muttered every morning before entering the lab, a private plea that perhaps someone, something, was watching over humanity. Today it felt more necessary than ever. "Not luck," he said under his breath, looking out at the sun's fiery surface. "Someone wanted me to survive, to do this." He turned to the data array, fingers flying over controls. The plan was radical. They had experimented with controlled solar flares, magnetic reconnection, and energy funneling. Marcus had theorized a device that could manipulate the sun's magnetic field, concentrate its energy, and release a directed pulse, a weapon unlike anything the universe had seen. Yet the internal conflict gnawed at him. Could he risk this? If he miscalculated, it wouldn't just destroy the blockade. It could fry the very fleet he was trying to save. And worse, it might incinerate Earth. The weight of billions pressed on his mind. Outside, alien monitors glimmered faintly against the sunlit hulls of human ships. They were not just observers. They were calculating, adaptive, relentless. Marcus had seen enough of their fleets to know they weren't just powerful. They were patient, methodical, and coldly intelligent. And yet, he could not help but notice the small things. One alien ship hesitated, sensors flickering as if puzzled by the humans' frantic activity. A subtle, almost imperceptible sign that maybe, just maybe, they didn't fully understand human resolve. Marcus's heart raced as he finalized the calculations. Magnetic field lines twisted in simulations across the lab screens. Energy projections formed glowing arcs, pulsing like miniature suns. He adjusted parameters, sweat beading on his forehead. The weight of responsibility pressed down. Every decision had consequences measured in millions of lives. Outside, the blockade shimmered with faint pulses. Marcus imagined it as a cage of light encasing the sun, daring humanity to challenge it, and he would. For the first time, he allowed himself a brief moment of defiance. "Let them see what humans can do," he whispered, voice tight with determination. "We are not prey." He initiated the energy funneling sequence. Data streamed at unimaginable speeds. Magnetic field lines bent, twisted, and converged toward the device at the lab's center. A soft hum grew into a deep resonance, vibrating through the floors and walls. Marcus felt it in his chest. Pure, raw energy, terrifying and magnificent. And then came the small miracle. A ripple passed through the blockade. Sensors detected instability, minute but undeniable. The aliens, for all their superiority, had not anticipated the audacity of a human willing to risk everything. Marcus allowed himself a brief, silent smile. A thought crossed his mind, simple but powerful. This can't just be an accident. He looked at the sun, radiant and eternal, and felt a quiet acknowledgement of something greater. A force beyond technology, beyond strategy, watching over the defiance of his species. Around him, engineers and scientists kept their positions, tension etched into every movement. Some prayed quietly, others whispered encouragements. All were part of something larger than themselves, a gamble born of desperation and courage. The first test pulse prepared to fire. Marcus's hand hovered over the final control. One decision, one act of human will. The fate of Sol, Earth, and the fleet hung in the balance, and in that moment, Marcus realized something profound. Humanity, no matter how small or fragile it seemed, could still reach into the heart of a star and push back against forces that seemed insurmountable. That courage, that cleverness was a weapon as powerful as any energy beam. He pressed the final trigger. The lab shook, lights flickered, and a concentrated pulse of magnetic energy shot toward the blockade. Outside, alien sensors flared, systems overloaded, and a ripple of panic passed through the enemy fleet. Marcus closed his eyes, bracing for disaster, but also holding a spark of hope that human audacity had just earned its first victory. The first pulse had done more than ripple through the alien blockade, it had stunned it. Yet Marcus knew the victory was only temporary. The aliens were adaptive. Their pattern shifted with a precision that made human tactics seem primitive. In orbit, the fleet's ships flickered, struggling to maintain energy. Some floated powerless, silent hulks against the endless darkness. Marcus paced the lab, the soft hum of electronics a tense symphony around him. Engineers adjusted magnetic field stabilizers, sweat beading on their brows. Outside the viewport, the sun blazed, magnificent and indifferent, a silent witness to humanity's audacity. Dr. Laine, sensors show increased feedback from the blockade, an engineer called. It's recalibrating faster than anticipated. Marcus clenched his jaw. He had anticipated resistance, but not this rapid adaptation. He ran his fingers through his hair, frustration and fear tangling in his chest. A human could only move so fast. The aliens could process strategies in milliseconds, yet he refused to give in to despair. Then we move faster, he muttered. We push harder. They don't understand humans yet. We can exploit that. The internal conflict gnawed at him. Every adjustment carried risk. Miscalculate and the concentrated energy could backfire, destroying the fleet or worse, reaching Earth. Yet passivity was not an option. Humanity had no margin for hesitation. In the midst of calculations, Marcus caught a glimpse of a junior technician, pale-faced, murmuring a quiet prayer under his breath. Marcus felt a pang of something he rarely acknowledged aloud, a mix of admiration and understanding. In the vast, indifferent cosmos, humans clung to faith as a quiet lifeline. Not force, not weapons. Faith. Not luck, Marcus thought again, staring at the swirling solar surface. Someone wanted me to live. Someone wanted us to reach this moment. He focused. Magnetic field lines, now mapped across the sun's corona, revealed subtle instabilities. Tiny fluctuations in the plasma, imperceptible to most, could be manipulated. If the energy could be concentrated along these lines, the next pulse could strike with far greater precision. Marcus adjusted the interface, sweat dripping from his temples. The lab vibrated as the magnetic channels aligned. Energy surged, golden arcs crawling across simulations like lightning on a stormy night. He felt the power in his chest, the almost unbearable hum of creation being bent to human will. Yet fear lingered. He saw in simulations the potential for catastrophe. A misaligned pulse could tear through the fleet, turning triumph into massacre. He closed his eyes, recalling Earth's pale blue glow from the observation window. Cities asleep, unaware of the war raging in orbit. Children dreaming. Families praying quietly, trusting strangers in space with their lives. Could he risk them? Outside, alien ships adjusted. Pulses of their own energy raced toward the fleet, probing, testing. One ship hesitated. Sensors showed confusion, a flicker of curiosity almost human in nature. Marcus noticed it, his mind racing. Perhaps they had never expected humans to manipulate a star. Perhaps their arrogance was a weakness. Prepare the secondary coil arrays, Marcus ordered. We're going to push the sun harder than ever. Focus bursts, precise channels. We strike at their recalibration points. The engineers moved with desperate efficiency, synchronizing magnetic funnels, calibrating plasma conduits, their hands shaking yet precise. Marcus watched, awe mixing with tension. Humanity at its best thrived under pressure. Fear sharpened ingenuity. Desperation sparked brilliance. Hours passed, the lab a whirl of energy and noise. Marcus felt exhaustion clawed him, but he pressed on. Every pulse, every minor adjustment required perfect timing. Outside, the sun's surface roiled violently, solar prominences twisting like living things yet responding to the human touch. Finally, the second pulse was ready. Marcus's hand hovered over the trigger. The lab went silent for a heartbeat, the hum of the sun's energy filling the void. He glanced at the viewport. Alien vessels shifted nervously. The blockade, which had seemed invincible, now flickered in patterns of instability. Marcus felt a surge of hope, but tempered by caution. "Remember," he whispered to the team, "this is not just physics. This is human will. Every calculation, every pulse, it's a statement. They have underestimated us, and that is their mistake." He pressed the trigger. Golden arcs of concentrated energy shot outward, bending along the sun's magnetic channels. Outside, the alien blockade shimmered, then faltered. Systems overloaded, pulses exploding in brilliant cascades. Human ships, for the first time in days, regained power, thrusters roaring to life. Marcus allowed himself a brief smile, though tension lingered. The aliens were adaptive. They would recover. But humanity had made its mark. For the first time, the galaxy saw the audacity of a species willing to bend a star to its will. And somewhere in the chaos, one alien observer paused, sensors flickering. It saw Marcus muttering words to an unseen force and wondered, why do humans prey, even when armed with weapons capable of unimaginable destruction? Marcus did not answer. He did not need to. He looked at the sun again, radiant and eternal, and whispered quietly, "This can't just be an accident. Someone wants us to survive, to fight." The siege of Sol had tightened, but humanity had struck back, and Marcus knew the coming hours would demand more courage, more brilliance, and more defiance than ever before. Marcus Laine stared at the simulations, eyes burning from hours of concentrated scrutiny. Every plasma flow, every magnetic twist, every solar flare was mapped, measured, and analyzed. Humanity's survival now depended not on fleets, not on guns, but on understanding the star itself, and bending it, ever so slightly, to human will. The lab thrummed with nervous energy. Engineers and technicians moved like clockwork, hands shaking yet precise, coordinating the complex lattice of coils and conduits. Outside, the sun blazed with indifferent grandeur, a furnace billions of kilometers wide, its roiling surface a constant reminder of what was at stake. Marcus's mind was a whirlwind. Every calculation carried the weight of millions of lives. A misstep could fry the fleet. Worse, it could fry Earth itself. He paused, hands hovering over the control panels, fighting the internal conflict gnawing at him. Was he daring too much? Was humanity ready for such a gamble? He remembered the quiet prayer of a young engineer nearby, whispered under his breath as he calibrated a secondary energy funnel. Marcus's chest tightened. Faith, quiet, personal, and resilient, threaded through humanity's greatest achievements. Perhaps it wasn't just science guiding them. Perhaps, he thought fleetingly, someone up there wanted humans to survive. Marcus adjusted the parameters, redirecting magnetic flux along unstable solar channels. The sun responded almost imperceptibly, arcs of plasma twisting like living serpents, waiting to obey the human touch. Outside the viewport, the alien blockade flickered and shimmered, sensing changes in the sun's emission. One vessel paused, sensors tracking Marcus's every adjustment. Even their superior intelligence could not comprehend the audacity of humans attempting to weaponize a star. "Secondary arrays are online," reported Lieutenant Kieran, her voice tense but controlled. "Ready for synchronized pulse." Marcus nodded, swallowing his fear. "Do it. Focus the channels. Let the sun do what humans cannot." Golden energy arcs converged toward the magnetic conduits, pulsing in harmony with Marcus's calculations. He felt the vibration of raw power, almost tangible, pressing against his chest. For a moment, the weight of responsibility threatened to crush him, but he breathed deeply, grounding himself, reminding himself that desperation often breeds brilliance. He adjusted the final stabilizer. "This is more than physics," he murmured. "This is defiance. We are human. We do not bow even when trapped by the impossible." The pulse fired. It was unlike anything Marcus had ever witnessed. Plasma ribbons bending along magnetic paths, concentrating into a precise beam aimed at the alien blockade. The effect was immediate. Sensors overloaded, energy conduits flared, and for the first time a ripple of panic passed through the enemy fleet. Marcus's heart raced. The blockade was faltering, yet he knew the danger was far from over. One miscalculation could turn triumph into catastrophe. His mind flickered to Earth, pale and distant, glowing softly beneath the shadow of the sun. Cities, children, families. He could not allow them to be collateral damage. And then a moment of clarity struck him. The sun was not just fuel. It was a partner. By understanding its natural rhythms, its hidden instabilities, humans could guide its power without destroying it. The arrogance of thinking they could control a star fully faded. Instead, Marcus learned to bend, to cooperate, to harmonize. Outside, alien vessels recalibrated. Their sensors, sophisticated and cold, could not predict the ingenuity of desperate human minds. One observer paused, recording Marcus's actions, confused by the mix of science and quiet faith guiding him. Why did humans pray while tampering with a star? It made no sense. Yet there was undeniable courage, precision, and defiance in every move. Marcus allowed himself a brief smile. Humanity was learning to dance with the impossible. Every pulse, every adjustment, every risk taken was a declaration. We will not be subdued. We will endure. And somewhere deep in his heart, Marcus whispered softly, "This is not luck. Someone wanted us to reach this moment." The sun, radiant and eternal, flared with renewed vigor, and humanity, standing on the edge of annihilation, proved once again that courage, intellect, and spirit could turn even the most impossible odds into a fighting chance. The pulse had struck, and the alien blockade shivered as if tasting the first hint of fear. In orbit, human ships, long dormant, sparked back to life. Engines hummed, energy cores glowed, tiny miracles against a vast, indifferent cosmos. Yet Marcus Laine knew better than to celebrate too soon. He paced the lab, every step echoing against the metallic floor. Data streams scrolled rapidly across the consoles, showing minute distortions in the alien energy field. The blockade was faltering, but adaptive intelligence was a dangerous opponent. The aliens were observing, recalibrating, preparing their next move. Feedback from the outer sector. Lieutenant Kieran reported, voice tight. "They're trying to counteract the pulse. Stabilizers are holding, but for how long?" Marcus clenched his jaw. He felt the familiar tug of doubt and fear, gnawing at the edges of his mind. Could they hold? Could one species truly challenge another so vastly superior? Every calculation was a gamble. Every second of hesitation could be fatal. Yet he refused to let despair dictate action. "Then we force their hand," Marcus said, voice low but firm. "They adapt. We innovate faster. They calculate. We outthink. Humanity doesn't just survive. We defy." He turned back to the sun, its corona dancing with magnetic arcs, responding subtly to the manipulations of his design. A ripple here, a shift there. The solar plasma obeyed. Not because humans commanded, but because Marcus understood it. Every pulse, every channel, every harmonic was a dialogue with the star. An engineer whispered a prayer, barely audible over the hum of energy conduits. Marcus caught the words, felt a quiet shiver. In a universe of cold, relentless physics, the human heart still reached for something beyond itself. "Not luck," he murmured. "Someone wants us to survive." Outside, the aliens reacted. One vessel hesitated, sensors flickering as if confused by the unpredictability of human ingenuity. Marcus noticed the subtle pause, a crack in the facade of alien certainty. They had not expected a species capable of bending a star's own. Energy with nothing but intellect, courage, and sheer audacity. He redirected the magnetic channels, synchronizing with the solar flares. The lab vibrated as golden arcs of energy converged, shimmering with a brilliance that seemed almost alive. Every engineer, Every technician, every hand on the console pulsed with tension. One wrong move, one misaligned calculation, and the brilliance could turn into disaster. Marcus's mind raced. He considered Earth, pale and distant beneath the sun's glow. Cities, children, families, entire lives rested on decisions made here, in the vacuum of orbit. Could they risk more pulses? Could they push harder? Could humanity truly bend a star without breaking themselves? Yes, he whispered, almost to himself. Because we have to. There is no other choice. The next pulse was prepared. It was a delicate ballet of energy, magnetism, and courage. Marcus pressed the trigger and golden arcs shot outward, flowing along the sun's magnetic lines like rivers of fire. The blockade wavered, destabilized, systems overloading in spectacular bursts of alien energy. For a moment, silence. Then, sensors indicated the ripple spreading across the entire blockade. Marcus exhaled slowly, though the tension remained, a thin, unbreakable thread of vigilance. They had done it. Humanity had struck back, and the aliens had faltered. Yet in the midst of triumph, Marcus's mind flickered to deeper questions. The sun's immense power, the alien technology, the sheer scale of the cosmos. It all seemed too vast, too intricate, to be random. He looked at the golden arcs reflecting off the viewport. This can't just be an accident, he whispered, a sense of awe threading through his fear. Someone wants us to fight, to survive. The aliens scrambled, their systems strained. One observer, curious and confused, lingered near the faltering blockade, scanning Marcus. Why do humans pray, even when armed with such power? Why do they risk everything? The question lingered unanswered as the humans pushed forward undeterred. Marcus's team worked feverishly, adjusting channels, reinforcing energy conduits, preparing for the inevitable counterattack. Every human on that station understood that survival was not guaranteed. Every pulse of energy was a statement. We are not prey. We will fight. We will endure. And somewhere deep in Marcus's heart, a quiet certainty bloomed. Humanity had faced the impossible, and in understanding the sun, in daring to defy a vastly superior force, they had discovered something more powerful than technology, courage, ingenuity, and unyielding spirit. The siege of Sol had rippled, and the first cracks in the alien armor were visible. But Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The real test was yet to come. Marcus Laine stood at the edge of the observation deck, staring at the sun in all its terrifying majesty. The flares twisted and writhed like living creatures, and yet in their chaos he saw patterns, threads of possibility that no alien could anticipate. Humanity's survival depended on understanding these threads, and bending them with precision and courage. "Dr. Laine," Lieutenant Kieran called, voice tight with urgency. "Secondary coils are at full capacity. Synchronization is stable. We're ready for the next pulse." Marcus nodded, swallowing the knot of fear in his throat. Every pulse so far had been a gamble. This one would be even more audacious. They were not merely sending energy. It would be a concentrated strike guided along magnetic channels, precise enough to melt through the alien blockade like a scalpel through flesh. His mind flickered briefly to Earth. Cities glowing softly beneath the sun's warmth. Families unaware of the battle raging above. Children dreaming. Farmers tending fields. Marcus's chest tightened. Failure was not an option. Every calculation, every pulse, every risk carried the weight of billions of lives. He turned to the console, fingers flying over controls. The magnetic channels had to be perfectly aligned. One misstep could shatter the fleet, fry Earth, or worse. He paused, feeling the internal conflict gnawing at him. Could humanity truly wield a star without destroying itself? Could courage and intellect triumph over fear? A young engineer, hands shaking, whispered a quiet prayer before calibrating the final conduit. Marcus caught the words, felt a surge of warmth in the cold, humming lab. Humans, he realized, had always survived by combining ingenuity with belief. Silent, personal, resilient faith. Not luck, not randomness. Guidance, he thought, from something greater than themselves. "Prepare the pulse," Marcus said, voice steady despite the storm of fear inside him. "This is more than energy. This is human defiance. Let them see what we are capable of. Golden arcs of energy flowed along the conduits, twisting and bending like living lightning. The sun seemed to respond, magnetic fields coiling in harmony with Marcus's manipulations. Outside, alien sensors faltered. One vessel hesitated, systems overloading in confusion. Marcus felt a surge of hope, but tempered with caution. He took a deep breath. "Not luck," he whispered under his breath. "Someone wanted me to survive. Someone wants us to fight." The pulse fired. Energy shot along the magnetic channels, striking the alien blockade with surgical precision. The effect was immediate. Plasma erupted in brilliant cascades, alien systems flashed, overloaded, and faltered. Human ships regained power, thrusters roaring back to life. Marcus watched, heart pounding as the blockade trembled. Yet the danger was far from over. The aliens were adaptive. They would respond, recalibrate, and strike back. Every moment of triumph was tempered by the knowledge that survival required more courage, more brilliance, and more risk. He turned to his team. Engineers, scientists, and technicians were tense but resolute, their eyes reflecting the golden light of the sun. Marcus allowed himself a brief smile. Humanity, desperate yet brilliant, had taken the first step in bending a star to its will. Outside, one alien observer paused, sensors flickering, confused by the audacity and precision of human action. Marcus, muttering quiet words of prayer, did not notice, but the observer recorded it. Puzzled. Why do humans pray even when armed with such destructive power? Why do they risk everything? Marcus looked once more at the sun, radiant, eternal, indifferent. And yet, in the dance of energy arcs and magnetic fields, in the hum of machines and the courage of humans, he saw something extraordinary: the power of intellect, courage, and unyielding spirit. The sun was no longer just a star, it was a weapon, a symbol of human defiance. The siege of Sol had shifted. The first real cracks appeared in the alien blockade. But Marcus knew the ultimate challenge lay ahead, controlling the sun's fury without letting it consume humanity itself. Every pulse, every decision was a declaration: we will endure, we will fight, we will survive. And in the quiet of the observation deck, Marcus whispered again, almost reverently, "This can't just be an accident. Someone wants us to be here. Someone wants us to survive." The alien blockade shuddered, fractured by the precise pulse from Marcus Laine's lab. Yet victory was only temporary. The enemies were relentless, adaptive, and far from defeated. In orbit, human ships hummed with renewed power, but even the briefest glance at the enemy fleet reminded Marcus that complacency was deadly. "Dr. Laine," Lieutenant Kieran reported, "they're retaliating. Incoming energy pulses detected on Sector 9. Shields are holding, but barely." Marcus's jaw tightened. He felt the familiar gnawing of fear and responsibility. Every decision now carried exponentially higher stakes. The sun's energy was a powerful ally, but even a star could not be fully tamed, and humanity was dancing on a razor's edge. He turned to the observation viewport. The sun roared in brilliance, flares twisting and coiling, responding to the manipulations of his team. Outside, alien ships glowed with energy discharges preparing to strike back. Marcus could almost feel their calculation, their patience, their cold precision. Yet he noticed something subtle, an unexpected hesitation, a flicker of doubt. They had underestimated human ingenuity and audacity. "Prepare for the counterstrike," Marcus said, voice steady despite the tension curling in his chest. "We'll use the sun again, but differently. Not just as a weapon, but as a shield. Magnetic channels aligned, energy conduits at maximum stability. Let's make them regret underestimating us." His mind raced. The internal conflict was intense. Every adjustment carried risk. A miscalculation could fry the fleet, destabilize the sun's delicate magnetic balance, or worse, devastate Earth itself. He paused, fingers hovering over the control panel, heart pounding. Could humans truly hold their ground against an enemy so superior? Beside him, engineers whispered prayers and encouragements. Marcus felt a quiet surge of warmth. Humans, he realized, thrived not just on intellect and courage, but on the faint, resilient thread of faith. The belief that survival was not just science, but something greater, guiding them through the impossible. "Not luck," he whispered again. "Someone wants us here. Someone wants us to fight." He activated the secondary energy funnels, golden arcs flowing like serpents along magnetic conduits, synchronized with the sun's own pulsing heart. The lab vibrated with raw energy, a hum that resonated deep in the chest. Outside, alien pulses met Marcus's own with sparks of plasma, collisions lighting up the void. The counterstrike unfolded. Human ships, shielded by the redirected solar energy, moved with newfound stability. Alien systems overloaded in places where the human pulses struck with precision. A ripple of panic spread through the enemy fleet. Calculations disrupted by unpredictability, their superiority challenged by ingenuity and audacity. Marcus watched, breath held, as the blockade flickered. Yet he knew the danger was far from over. Adaptive intelligence was dangerous, relentless. The aliens would recover, recalibrate, and strike back harder. He looked to the sun, radiant and eternal, and whispered softly, "This can't just be an accident. Someone wants us to survive, to endure, to defy." In the control room, the team's faces reflected determination and awe. Marcus allowed himself a brief smile. Humanity had taken the impossible and bent it to its will, showing that courage, intellect, and spirit could rival even the coldest alien logic. But the siege of Sol was far from over. The aliens were still out there, calculating, observing, and preparing for their next move. And Marcus knew, deep in his heart, that the ultimate challenge was yet to come, one that would demand every ounce of human ingenuity, courage, and resolve. The sun, vast and indifferent, continued to blaze, and humanity, for all its fragility, had once again made its stand, proving that the human spirit could bend even a star to its will. Marcus Laine stood at the center of the lab, eyes glued to the swirling simulations on the holoscreens. The sun's magnetic fields, untamed and immense, rippled with energy that dwarfed any human technology. And yet Marcus saw a pattern, a path to bending this raw power into something more than a weapon. Something precise, deadly, and utterly human in its ingenuity. "Dr. Laine," Lieutenant Kieran said, her voice taut with urgency. "The blockade is adapting faster than anticipated. If we don't synchronize the magnetic channels perfectly, the next pulse could destabilize the fleet." Marcus's chest tightened. He had expected resistance, but the speed of their adaptation left no margin for error. Every calculation was critical. Every misalignment could be catastrophic. He closed his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of billions resting on his shoulders. Earth orbiting stations, cities below, their survival depended entirely on human courage and intellect. He exhaled slowly. Then we converge. Magnetic channels, secondary coils, and solar plasma harmonics, all in perfect alignment. We'll push the sun's energy like a blade, precise enough to cut through the blockade without harming ourselves. The engineers and technicians worked feverishly, hands moving in near-perfect synchrony, calibrating arrays, adjusting flux conduits, reinforcing stabilizers. Marcus felt their tension, their fear, and their unwavering determination. Human ingenuity thrived under pressure. In desperation, brilliance found a way. He glanced at a young engineer murmuring a quiet prayer before engaging the final energy conduit. Marcus allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible nod. Faith, he realized again, was a silent ally, threaded through courage and calculation, invisible yet undeniably present. "Not luck," Marcus whispered under his breath, staring at the sun's roiling surface. "Someone wants us here. Someone wants us to survive." The magnetic convergence began. Golden arcs of energy coiled along the sun's natural flux, bending, twisting, and aligning with Marcus's precise calculations. The lab vibrated as raw energy surged, almost palpable in its intensity. Marcus felt the power pressing against him, a mixture of awe, fear, and exhilaration. Outside, the alien fleet detected the convergence. One vessel paused, systems flickering as the magnitude of human audacity became painfully clear. They had not anticipated a species capable of synchronizing a star's magnetic energy with such precision, combining intellect, courage, and relentless resolve. Marcus pressed the final trigger. Energy arcs shot outward along converged magnetic channels, focusing into a deadly pulse aimed at the core of the blockade. The effect was immediate. Plasma cascaded, alien systems overloaded, and a ripple of chaos spread through the enemy fleet. Human ships, shielded by redirected solar energy, regained full operational capacity. A quiet murmur swept through the lab. Relief, awe, and tension mingled, Marcus allowed himself a brief smile, knowing humanity had achieved something unprecedented, bending a star's power to its will with intellect, courage, and precision. Yet Marcus knew the ultimate challenge remained. The blockade was faltering, but adaptive intelligence was relentless. The aliens would recover, and humanity would need to be ready to push further, to risk more, to prove again that courage and ingenuity could rival even the most formidable of foes. He looked out at the sun, radiant and eternal, and whispered softly, "This can't just be an accident. Someone wants us to endure, to fight, to survive." The siege of Sol had shifted. Humanity had shown its first true mastery of the star's energy. But Marcus understood that every victory carried a cost, every pulse a risk. The next move would demand even more courage, intellect, and unyielding spirit, and somewhere, in the vast emptiness of space, an alien observer paused, sensors flickering, puzzled by humans' audacity and resilience. Why do they risk everything? Why do they pray even when armed with such destructive power? The answer eluded the alien, yet the humans continued, undaunted, precise, and unbroken. Marcus turned back to his team, determination blazing in his eyes. Humanity had harnessed the sun, but the war for survival was far from over. Marcus Laine stood at the center of the lab, eyes glued to the swirling simulations on the hollow screens. The sun's magnetic fields, untamed and immense, rippled with energy that dwarfed any human technology. And yet Marcus saw a pattern, a path to bending this raw power into something more than a weapon, something precise, deadly, and utterly human in its ingenuity. "Dr. Laine," Lieutenant Kieran said, her voice taut with urgency, "the blockade is adapting faster than anticipated. If we don't synchronize the magnetic channels perfectly, the next pulse could destabilize the fleet." Marcus's chest tightened. He had expected resistance, but the speed of their adaptation left no margin for error. Every calculation was critical. Every misalignment could be catastrophic. He closed his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of billions resting on his shoulders. Earth orbiting stations, cities below. Their survival depended entirely on human courage and intellect. He exhaled slowly. "Then we converge. Magnetic channels, secondary coils, and solar plasma harmonics, all in perfect alignment. We'll push the sun's energy like a blade, precise enough to cut through the blockade without harming ourselves." The engineers and technicians worked feverishly, hands moving in near-perfect synchrony, calibrating arrays, adjusting flux conduits, reinforcing stabilizers. Marcus felt their tension, their fear, and their unwavering determination. Human ingenuity thrived under pressure. In desperation, brilliance found a way. He glanced at a young engineer, murmuring a quiet prayer before engaging the final energy conduit. Marcus allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible nod. Faith, he realized again, was a silent ally, threaded through courage and calculation, invisible yet undeniably present. "Not luck," Marcus whispered under his breath, staring at the sun's roiling surface. "Someone wants us here. Someone wants us to survive." The magnetic convergence began. Golden arcs of energy coiled along the sun's natural flux, bending, twisting, and aligning with Marcus's precise calculations. The lab vibrated as raw energy surged, almost palpable in its intensity. Marcus felt the power pressing against him, a mixture of awe, fear, and exhilaration. Outside, the alien fleet detected the convergence. One vessel paused, systems flickering as the magnitude of human audacity became painfully clear. They had not anticipated a species capable of synchronizing a star's magnetic energy with such precision, combining intellect, courage, and relentless resolve. Marcus pressed the final trigger. Energy arcs shot outward along converged magnetic channels, focusing into a deadly pulse aimed at the core of the blockade. The effect was immediate. Plasma cascaded, alien systems overloaded, and a ripple of chaos spread through the enemy fleet. Human ships, shielded by redirected solar energy, regained full operational capacity. A quiet murmur swept through the lab. Relief, awe, and tension mingled. Marcus allowed himself a brief smile, knowing humanity had achieved something unprecedented, bending a star's power to its will with intellect, courage, and precision. Yet Marcus knew the ultimate challenge remained. The blockade was faltering, but adaptive intelligence was relentless. The aliens would recover, and humanity would need to be ready to push further, to risk more, to prove again that courage and ingenuity could rival even the most formidable of foes. He looked out at the sun, radiant and eternal, and whispered softly, "This can't just be an accident. Someone wants us to endure, to fight, to survive." The siege of Sol had shifted. Humanity had shown its first true mastery of the star's energy. But Marcus understood that every victory carried a cost, every pulse a risk. The next move would demand even more courage, intellect, and unyielding spirit, and somewhere, in the vast emptiness of space, an alien observer paused, sensors flickering, puzzled by humans' audacity and resilience. Why do they risk everything? Why do they pray even when armed with such destructive power? The answer eluded the alien, yet the humans continued, undaunted, precise, and unbroken. Marcus turned back to his team, determination blazing in his eyes. Humanity had harnessed the sun, but the war for survival was far from over. Marcus Laine stood alone at the center of the lab, heart pounding, eyes scanning the hollow screens that displayed the sun's turbulent surface. Every magnetic field line, every plasma current, every solar flare had been mapped, calculated, and synchronized. Humanity's last chance rested on his hands, his intellect, and his courage. "Dr. Laine," Lieutenant Kieran's voice came from the comm, tight with tension. "The blockade is stabilizing. They've adapted partially to our previous pulses. Any miscalculation now, even a fraction of a percent, could be catastrophic." Marcus's chest tightened. He felt the familiar gnaw of fear, the internal conflict that had accompanied him since the siege began. Could a human, fragile and mortal, truly bend a star to its will? Could courage, intellect, and ingenuity outmatch superior alien technology? He glanced at Earth in the distance, pale and peaceful beneath the sun's warm light. Cities twinkled faintly, unaware of the war raging above. Children slept. Families dreamed. Marcus's resolve hardened. Failure was not an option. "Prepare the final pulse arrays," he ordered, voice steady, unwavering. "This is humanity's stand. We bend the sun's energy precisely, guided by intellect, courage, and our will. The blockade ends here." Engineers and technicians worked feverishly, hands moving in perfect coordination, aligning conduits, stabilizing magnetic fields, and synchronizing plasma channels. The lab vibrated with the sun's raw power, golden arcs dancing along the conduits, twisting, bending, converging into a lethal harmony. Marcus felt the immense energy pressing against him, almost tangible, a weight that threatened to crush the unprepared. And yet he focused, channeling the fear into clarity, the tension into precision. A young engineer whispered a prayer, barely audible above the hum. Marcus caught it and allowed a brief private smile. Faith, quiet and personal, threaded through every pulse, every calculation, every act of defiance. Not luck, he thought. Someone wants us here. Someone wants us to survive. The pulse fired. Golden arcs shot outward, bending along magnetic channels, focusing into a concentrated beam aimed at the alien blockade. Plasma erupted in spectacular bursts. Energy systems overloaded, and the enemy fleet faltered under the unprecedented precision of human strategy. For a moment, silence. Then the blockade fractured, melting into a cascade of plasma and energy, consumed by the very star humanity had bent to its will. Human ships, fully operational, thrusters roaring, surged forward through the shattered blockade. Marcus exhaled, relief washing over him, but tempered by awareness. The sun was a weapon now, but its power had been harnessed, not destroyed. Humanity had survived, defied, and triumphed, through intellect, courage, and unyielding spirit. He turned to his team. Faces reflected awe, exhaustion, and triumph. Humanity had done the impossible, turned a star into a weapon without succumbing to its fury. And in that achievement, Marcus glimpsed something greater, a quiet acknowledgement that survival was guided by more than strategy and science. The sun blazed eternal, indifferent, yet radiant. And somewhere in the vastness of space, an alien observer paused, sensors flickering, confused by the audacity, ingenuity, and resilience of humans. Why do they pray even when wielding unimaginable power? Why do they risk everything? Marcus whispered softly, staring at the radiant star. This can't just be an accident. Someone wanted us to fight, to survive, to endure. The siege of Sol was over for now. Humanity had shown that intellect, courage, and willpower could challenge even the most formidable forces. And though the cosmos remained vast and indifferent, the human spirit had carved its mark among the stars. The alien blockade lay in ruins, melted plasma drifting like cosmic smoke across the void. Human ships surged forward, engines humming in synchronized victory. Marcus Laine stood at the center of the lab, chest still racing, eyes reflecting the golden blaze of the sun. They had done it. Humanity had bent the very star to its will and survived, yet triumph was tempered by reflection. The siege had exacted a cost, both physical and emotional. Engineers slumped in exhaustion, technicians wiped sweat from their faces, and the lab itself vibrated with residual energy, a reminder of the raw power they had wielded. Marcus walked to the viewport, gazing at Earth below, pale and serene. Unaware of the cosmic battle that had raged above, cities twinkled faintly, a fragile reminder of all that had been protected. He exhaled slowly, relief mingling with awe. Humanity had survived the impossible, not by luck, but through intellect, courage, and unyielding will. Lieutenant Kieran approached quietly. "Dr. Laine, we did it. The fleet is safe, Earth is safe. The blockade? It's gone." Marcus nodded, feeling a surge of quiet gratitude. "Yes," he said softly. "Not luck. Someone wanted us to survive. Someone guided us through the chaos. Humanity's courage, intellect, and spirit, they've endured." In the background, engineers whispered prayers of thanks. Quiet moments of belief threaded naturally through the triumph. Marcus allowed himself to smile. Faith, personal and resilient, had been a silent ally, entwined with ingenuity and bravery. He turned to the lab team, eyes meeting theirs. "Remember this moment," he said. "We faced the impossible and we survived. Not just because of technology, but because of who we are, humans. Curious, courageous, unyielding. The universe may be vast and indifferent, but we are remarkable." Outside, the sun blazed eternal, radiance spilling across the void. Alien observers lingered at the edges of the shattered blockade, their sensors recording, perplexed. Humans had risked everything, wielded unimaginable power, and yet remained unbroken. Why do they pray even when armed with such energy? Why do they persist despite the odds? The answers eluded them. Marcus glanced once more at the sun, golden arcs still shimmering in the corona. He whispered softly, almost reverently, "This can't just be an accident. Someone wanted us here. Someone wanted us to endure, to fight, to survive." In the weeks that followed, humanity rebuilt. The fleet was reinforced, orbital stations repaired, and energy grids gradually restored. Scientists and engineers, inspired by the triumph, pushed technological boundaries further than ever. And yet through it all, a quiet humility remained. Humans had bent a star, but they had survived because of courage, intellect, and an unseen hand guiding them through peril. The siege of Sol had ended. Humanity had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, defiance, creativity, and belief, silent, resilient faith, could carve a path through the void, and Marcus Laine, standing beneath the eternal blaze of the sun, felt something profound, that survival, ingenuity, and courage were never mere accidents. They were the essence of humanity itself. The void had fallen silent. The alien blockade was gone, dissolved into streaks of molten plasma that shimmered like distant stars fading into darkness. Marcus Laine stood on the observation deck, chest heaving, eyes locked on the sun, the same sun that had been a weapon, a shield, and a testament to human audacity. He allowed himself a long, slow breath. For the first time in weeks, the lab was still. The golden arcs of energy that had once raged through conduits now settled into quiet hums, resonating softly across the solar arrays. Humanity had survived. Against overwhelming odds, against a superior force, against the indifferent vastness of space itself, they had prevailed. Lieutenant Kieran approached him, her expression a mix of exhaustion and awe. "Dr. Laine? Humanity, we did it. We bent the sun. We broke the blockade." Marcus nodded, feeling a weight lift from his chest. Yet he knew the truth. Victory had never been about raw power alone. It had been intellect, courage, creativity, and an unyielding spirit, the very essence of humanity, that had turned the impossible into reality. "Not luck," Marcus whispered, almost to himself. "Not randomness. Someone wanted us to survive, to endure, to fight." He turned to his team. Faces lit by the gentle glow of the sun reflected pride, relief, and exhaustion. Marcus's voice carried quietly but firmly. "Remember this. We did not survive because the universe was kind. We survived because we dared. We survived because we refused to yield. Humanity does not surrender to the void. We defy it, we endure, we rise. A young engineer, still trembling, whispered a quiet prayer. Marcus caught it, a small smile touching his lips. Faith, quiet and personal, had threaded itself through every calculation, every pulse, every risk. It had been as essential as courage, as vital as intellect. Humans had not only bent a star, they had survived with spirit intact. Outside, the alien observers lingered at the edges of the shattered blockade. Their sensors flickered as they tried to comprehend what they had witnessed. Humans, fragile and mortal, had challenged a vastly superior force and won. Why do they risk everything? Why do they pray even when armed with such power? Questions without answers. Marcus gazed at the sun, its eternal blaze reflecting in his eyes. This can't just be an accident, he murmured. Someone wanted us here. Someone wanted humanity to endure, to fight, to survive. The fleet below hummed with activity, but this time not in panic, not in desperation, but in quiet triumph. Engineers repaired systems, scientists prepared new calculations, and every human aboard felt the quiet exhilaration of surviving against all odds. The siege of Sol had ended. Humanity had proven that intellect, courage, creativity, and spirit, paired with quiet faith, could challenge even the most formidable adversaries. The message was clear: never back humanity into a corner near its own star. When pressed to the edge, humans rise. When faced with the impossible, humans innovate. And when confronted with annihilation, humans endure. Marcus turned to the team one last time. We have bent the sun, yes. But remember this, our true power lies not in weapons, not in stars, not in energy. It lies in us. In our minds, our hearts, our will. The universe may be vast and indifferent, but we are remarkable. We are human, and that is our greatest defiance. The sun blazed, eternal and indifferent, but now a witness to humanity's courage, creativity, and unyielding spirit. The galaxy would remember, not the aliens, not the technology, but the humans who dared, who prayed quietly, who calculated fearlessly, and who refused to yield. And somewhere, far beyond the shattered blockade, an alien observer paused. Its sensors flickered. Why do they endure? Why do they defy? Why do they pray even as they bend stars to their will? Questions with no easy answers. Marcus Laine exhaled, eyes on the sun, heart full of awe. Humanity had survived, humanity had triumphed, and humanity would continue, undaunted, defiant, eternal. The war for the homeworld was over, but the legend had just begun.